Alright, how was everyone's week?
Good.
Good?
Who's in the camera this time? Your head was cut off on the last
I
week.
know. But, you know, I got this part, which
No,
is
you're
more
good.
important. So, I got a lot of books, so hopefully I'll make a difference. They want to do some more carving.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
a few. I tried this plastic stuff.
How did you find it?
Better than I thought it was gonna be.
Wow.
I thought it was gonna be really hard.
Okay,
but it's not.
can I ask you a question while we're on the topic of the plastic?
Sure.
Because it's not porous, how does it accept the ink?
It just sits on top, it won't soak in, but,
So you gotta be really careful placing, right? Cause it would have.
yeah.
And there's no right side, wrong side.
Not with this
Correct.
stuff, yeah.
So could you actually put one on yourself, on both
Yeah,
sides?
if you have a thicker piece of wood, you can do both sides too.
But this would be thick enough for
Two? Oh,
this one, wouldn't it?
Yep.
As long as you weren't too deep.
That's neat.
And I tried this thing that I had. That was kind of,
That's very
Yeah.
good. Is that?
you had to be really careful, cause after doing this
Yeah.
and that one,
Yeah.
it's like butter. It went places I didn't really want it to go.
And those are things you
That-
can buy over there.
I had it from before, I can't remember why I had it.
That's quite dense.
Those things over there, like.
And I
I
did a
know,
little
but
baby
I'm
one.
just wondering what the primary purpose of it is. Is it?
Which?
That stuff, these kind of wobbly.
The wobbly things, yeah.
Strip, yeah, it's not like underlay or anything like that.
No, Spiela makes them.
Maybe it's softer, maybe it was specifically made so that it gets tired.
Yeah, it's softer, it's maybe meant for.
There's 3 different colors, but I couldn't
I don't think so.
figure out what was what the difference was between.
So I played around with this, but I'm not very happy with it, but I'm just viewing it as a learning experience, trying to get comfortable with the tools without cutting my hand.
Yep, that's good.
And, anyway, to start.
I brought some drawer liner this week, so, Jim brought a bolt, so we're good for ever.
I didn't know how much you wanted.
We're good. Especially if you put this down, it kind of grips the board a little bit. Not right now because it's on sticky paper, but just on your table.
I realized when I got home last week, I didn't give you $10.
Oh, sure.
Jim, before we're not doing that.
Before I forget again.
Oh, okay.
I also only have.
Oh, you turn it. My bank closed. St. Mary's on 23. Yeah, it's closed. Yeah, it's credit union, if anything.
All right, so we'll get started. So first half of class, we'll go through paper, printing, sharpening tools, collecting money, and another way to transfer your image onto your block. And this will be recorded. I think my head's clear on the video, so sorry about that. So when my hands are clean, I'll talk about paper. So we have newsprint. So newsprint will be provided for you, just a stack over there. So we use this for lots of things. We'll go through lots and lots of newsprint, probably more than you think. At the university, we go through thousands of sheets a year. So good proofs on these. So when you start off, it's always good when you ink up your block to print for the first time to print on newsprint, something that's cheap. Because it probably won't print full the first time you do it. It'll probably take a couple of proofs to get it up to the point where you're ready to start printing your good prints, your edition. You can also use it for wrapping your blocks or folding it in half and using it as a slip sheet for your prints. So that's newsprint. And then we have different types of paper. So I have a package of cardstock. So it's lynx cover. Sometimes it's called cougar cover. I don't know why they're named after cats.
I used to know it as Mayfair.
Mayfair, yep, another word for it. So it's just cardstock. It's not archival. It does have some buffers in it, so it should last a while. But over time it will deteriorate. So newsprint, definitely not archival. And if you put it in, if you take this to a window, the sun coming in through the window will make this yellow really fast. And it'll start to be really brittle. This will last longer than that, but even over time. We have prints in the archives in the printmaking studio. They go back to the 60s, and they use cardstock. And when I lift it up, it kind of starts crumbling and cracking. Just over time, the acids that are on the paper deteriorate the paper over time. So ideally, you'd want to use good quality paper. Mayfair is fine though, like I said, especially when you're starting off. I think a sheet of cougar paper is about 70 sheets. When you start going to the good paper, it could be like anywhere from $6 to $14, $15 a sheet. So you have European papers. So they're cotton rag papers. So this type of paper isn't made from wood pulp. It's actually made from cotton. And it's acid free and archival. There's different types. Hues sells a variety in those drawers behind me. Stonehenge is probably the cheapest rag paper you can get. And it works fairly well for leaf printing. It's a little bit stiff, but it does work.
So
You can
that
use
would be your presentation, your finished paper?
Yeah, you can use it for your edition. I've used it a number of times for leaf printing. So. You can get fancier paper. You can get BFK Reeves.
Sorry, what was this one called again?
Stonehenge.
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 Oops.
Oh.
What am I doing?
And then there's different types. There's BFK Reeves, so RIVES. That's a good paper. Somerset Satin from Britain. Works really well. So those are the cotton rag papers. We're printing by hand. Sometimes the cotton rag papers, they're on the thicker side as compared to newsprint. So they take a little more work to print. Along with those European papers, we have washi paper. So Japanese or Chinese paper. So the general term I use for this type of paper is washi. Sometimes you'll hear it being called rice paper. It's not actually made from rice. That's kind of a slang term for it. And I have some washi here if you want to try out. It's thinner. So I find it's easier to print by hand. And there's different types of washi. Mulberry would probably be the cheapest. Kitakata, Gompi. There's a variety of different types of washi to play around with. So there's tons of different papers to choose from. And different colors too. This one has nice cream color. Stonehenge comes in different colors like grays and browns and blues. And then some of the colors are more light fast than others. Like Stonehenge has a black. I don't think it's that light fast. You can get a black, I think, Somerset Satin. That'll hold up a lot better, but it's a lot more expensive.
And the black paper would go gray, silver or something?
It's gonna get faded,
Faded.
yeah, over time, depending on where you're showing it. If you keep it in a drawer, it'll
Yeah.
probably last long, but you don't want to.
You're talking about people that put it in the direct in the.
Yeah. So when you get your paper, it usually comes in a sheet, and we're printing fairly small, so you want to trim down your paper. So you have a couple of options. If you want to keep the straight edge, you can use a ruler and an X-Acto knife. We have boards that you can cut on, don't cut on the tables. Or you can do something called deckled edge. So when you get really nice paper, like the Stonehenge or the BFK Reeves, it has this nice deckled edge. It's kind of rough edge here. And we mimic that by tearing our paper. So rather than cutting it with an X-Acto knife, you can tear your paper. So
And what do you call it, deco?
deckle.
Deck-
So deckle.
Thanks.
So if you turn the paper, you just mark each side where you want to cut it. So I'm doing 10 inches here, 10 inches there. I'm using this ruler. At the university we have tear bars, which are really heavy, straight edges with a beveled edge. This one's not as heavy, but it does have a beveled edge. And then you'll line up your two marks. Like so. And then you want to hold this down and then fold the paper toward the ruler. And then you get kind of a rough edge that approximates the deckled edge. Not quite the same, but pretty close. That's how you prep your paper. So when you're printing on newsprint or the proofs we did yesterday, last class, we're not too concerned about registration or lining up your block with your paper. Ideally, you want to print with nice square edges all the way around, they're nice and even. You can either print on a larger piece of paper and then trim it down after, or you can do a registration sheet. So a registration sheet, they usually use a piece of newsprint. Newsprint again. And then I trace out my block on two sides, just with a pencil or a pen. Like so. And then you want to figure out your size for your paper. So most of the times when we're making a print, I like to have a nice margin. Some instructors or printmakers like really large margins. I usually don't go smaller than an inch, depending on what I'm doing. It depends on the print and depends on the artist. Some artists will do something called a bleed print, where they'll print right to the edge of the paper, and that's totally fine. Otherwise, I usually give myself 1 to 2 inches, depending on what I'm doing. If you're doing margin or border around your print, you want to leave a little bit more room on the bottom to sign your print, about ½ an inch or so, just so you can sign it at the bottom. So, measure out your block. My block is about 8 by 5 3/4. So I'm gonna make my paper 10. 10 by 8.5. I'm planning to do an addition, do a bunch of printing. It's probably best to do this first before we start working, since our hands are clean. Washi can be a little bit more tricky to tear, so sometimes it's better to use an X-Acto knife. And then you can either measure out your paper, trace it out like that, or just measure using a ruler. So I know I want 1 inch on the side, so I'm gonna do 1 inch there.
So you wanna lay out a bunch of paper for not only the finished product, but for also tests?
Yeah.
And you want them all the same dimension?
For the tests, I mean, if they're just proofs on newsprint, it's up to you if you want to tear them down.
I just wondered how exacting you're trying to make all those different types of paper,
As close as I can.
but they have no relationship to each other, right?
Right.
Okay, okay. I guess the only moisture would be the block.
Pardon me?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
They would be the size of your block that you're dimensioning everything to.
Yep.
Yeah. I get lonely all day, I have no one to talk to.
I forgot about all this stuff and I just cut up my paper into little squares. They're all very different sizes.
So something like that. So my paper would be here, and then my block would be here. So when I'm printing, my block would go here, and then my paper will line up with those marks here. That makes sense. Easier to do on the table, but
Do you have a registration mark on your block as well as on the paper? Like
I usually don't. No.
No?
You could if you wanted to, I suppose. I usually just do 2 sides, and then register to that corner. I find the registration is more accurate. When you're doing black and white, not a huge deal if it shifts a little bit, but when we get into color, you want to make sure your registration is more as accurate as possible. I find if you trace all 4 sides of the block, when you're printing, during printing, you put the block down, you're always shifting it just a little bit to try to fit all 4.
It also
lines.
depends on who cut your block. because
That
it-
too. I have one. This one's
Because it wouldn't be perfectly parallel or 90 degrees.
for sure. So I always go with that one corner. And just before I start printing, I will take my registration sheet and put it on a piece of Mylar. Just to keep the registration sheet clean. And then between prints, you're good. Eventually, you're gonna get ink on the back of your block, and then they'll transfer over. So then you can just take a cloth and wipe it in between prints. So that's registration, or one way to do it. Good.
You want to do all of that before you get dirty.
Ideally,
Yeah.
Ideally.
Okay.
I have seen printers where their hands are just covered in black, and when they handle paper, they wear gloves.
Yeah.
Or you can wear gloves when you do your inking, and then take them off and handle your paper with your hands clean, or wash your hands. But ideally, you want to keep your margins clean. Alright, oh, maybe I'll print first. So for printing, I did this on the last week. So you can print on a piece of glass, like Jim's brought, or a piece of plexi, which doesn't clean as nicely as glass, but it does work. I always have Mylar here too, you can use that. So the ink that we're using again are these crayon-filled water-soluble inks. They're oil-based, but they wash with soap and water. I like them a lot. They're a little expensive, but they do work quite well. You can get oil-based inks that wash with a solvent or vegetable oil. Those work well as well. At the university, we use rubber-based inks, so Banson ink. So there's different types of ink.
So does the oil-based ink take longer to dry?
It does, yeah.
But that would also give you a longer open time to print.
That's the advantage of that. Speedball does sell cheaper block printing ink. Those little blue tubes over there. They're good for kids, I think.
I've used those for my students.
Yeah, it works fine. If you add some glycerin to that, it slows down the drying time a little bit.
Can you use that on fabric? Do you have to add something perhaps?
These ones, they're not made for fabric. There are fabric inks that you can get for relief printing. I have some here, so I'll try those out. I mean, if you're printing on fabric and not planning to wear the fabric or wash it ever, then you can probably get away with using this. But the fabric inks that we use for relief printing, they're made to, like, you can dry them on the cloth and then throw in the laundry or whatever. So I'm just gonna use black, but we have a whole bunch of different colors. So please feel free to help yourself. And have gloves. So for the ink, it comes in a tube. I'm just gonna lay down some ink. Like that, just a line of ink or a ribbon of ink. And then you grab a roller or a brayer. I have a bunch here you can use. And there's different types of brayers. These are the ones that Speedball makes. They're fine, they're good.
There's different sizes.
There's different sizes, you get different diameters. I know the Speedball tends to be the same diameter. But when we go to visit the university, we have rollers that are like this big. So you can do giant blocks.
Recommend the soft ones over the hard.
Yeah, the soft ones, yeah.
Then the larger the diameter, the more ink it would hold as well, because
Yep.
more surface area.
And depending on what you're using, black, you can get away with kind of going in different directions on the block because it's a solid color. When you do a lot of transparent colors, if you have a roller with a small diameter, you'll see the passes. You'll get kind of a ghost image because the image will repeat on the roller. So ideally, if you're printing with transparent color, you'd have a roller with a larger diameter than the length of your block. That way the image doesn't repeat on the block. You can kind of get away with that if you kind of feather out your rolling. And I've done it here for the class and it works okay. But rollers are really expensive. I have one at home with like this big background. It's about $500.
Wow.
So it's an investment, but. And these are I think 20, 20-ish, 25.
37 for 6-inch,
37.
4-inch, 25, 29 for this Speedball 3.5 inch.
Are they sort of a neoprene or what are they?
Yep.
Interchangeable, I think.
If you take care of them, they'll last a long time. So. So when you start inking up, you start off on the plexi. So you're going to dip into the ribbon of ink, and you're going to roll out, and then you're going to go back, and you're going to lift up a little bit, and go back. So when you lift up, the roller moves just a little bit, so it finds a new spot. That way the ink gets spread evenly. If you just go back and forth, it doesn't ink evenly. You'll just have the same spot being touched with ink every time. So you need to lift. You don't have to do it that exaggerated, but after a while you get to the point where you just kind of, the consistency of the ink is really important. You don't want to go too thick. If it's too thick, you'll start filling in your fine detail. So I always tell my students it's better to do more passes with thinner ink than one big thick pass. And I sometimes get one student who wants to just do it all in one go, and then because it'll save them some time, and then they have to clean their block, and cleaning a block is kind of a pain, especially with fine detail. So you want something like that. It has a kind of a nice velvety look to it. It has kind of a nice hissing noise. And you can add ink as you need to. So you just kind of dip it into your ribbon as you need to. Also, when you're inking, you just need to go the length of your roller. Again, sometimes I have students, they'll go from one end of the table to the other end. It really doesn't do anything for you. It just sends out the ink and you have to use more ink. You can keep that in mind. It'll save you cleanup after effort. If you go too thick, the texture will be really pronounced. And it'll make a really loud noise. If that happens, don't panic. You can grab a paint scraper with a razor blade and just scrape off some of the ink. Don't scrape off the roller because you can damage the roller. But if you need to remove excess ink, we have paint scrapers. You can put the razor blade.
So you're just thinning it, not technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so,
So in essence, whatever you're putting on your raw base duplicates what is going to be on the roller, which then will be on the block.
yep.
You know,
So a little bit thicker. If you're printing by hand, you can go a little bit thicker with the ink. So I try to keep that in mind when I'm printing by hand. So there. And then when you're printing, so I have this table set up with a piece of mylar, 2 pieces of mylar, so we can ink up here. So we'll try to ink up separately from where we're printing. Just keep things clean. And then basically you start off your block. Pull it up. I'm using a little bit of pressure, not too much. And then I go back and ink up some more. So. This block's been inked up a few times, so it won't take too much ink to ink up.
so there you're going on the bias.
Pardon me?
You're going on the bias on that one. So you want to go back and forth and plus diagonal.
Yeah, I go in different
It
directions.
doesn't really matter as long as you get the ink on.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
No, that's good. You do raise a good point though. Depending on your block and how you cut it, you might have a large open area. So let's say this is all open area. I probably want to avoid inking this way because then your roller is going to go into their open area, right? So if that's open, I want to ink up this way so the trees can kind of support the roller so it doesn't dip so much into the open area.
But once you get your $10,000 in, it's natural.
Sure. I'm almost there.
Come to your shop next, James.
So some people go back and forth, some people just do one roll. You can take a look at it.
What are you looking for, Patrick? The sheen?
Kind of a sheen. It's nice and even.
No empty spots?
No empty spots. If you stained your wood with black ink, it's gonna be a little bit harder. The black ink tends to be more matte, and the printing ink is a little more glossy, so you can kind of tell from there.
So what's your average open time before you get that to print?
Oh, this stuff you have a few hours.
Not in the middle of summer though, but a few hours.
Yeah, it does. It's yeah, it's
You
nice.
can ink it up and it'll be good for a few hours. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a
Yeah.
panic thing.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to panic. Like it's not that
It's not
speedball
like-
stuff dries quite quickly.
Yeah.
I find you have to replace it every once in a while. You scrape it off and add some more. This stuff will, if I left it out here, it'll last the class.
Super.
Yeah, it's nice. So it is nice ink to use. All right, when you inked up your block, then we can bring it over to our registration sheet. Probably do one on newsprint. So you should. And place it on top with your paper. Once you place it down, try not to move it. If you do, you'll shift it and you'll get smudge marks in your margins. So ideally place it down. You can almost kind of rub it with your hand a little bit just to kind of stick it down. So we're printing by hand, so it's really just about pressure. So I have seen people just use their fists and they'll print that way. But it's kind of painful. You have a couple options. First one, the spoon. You can't go wrong with the spoon. I'm gonna grab another. So it's not a bad idea to have a piece of newsprint on top, or even a piece of wax paper to make it easier to move around, and it protects the back of your paper. Sometimes, we found that last class, this has something on it, black or something, and it stains the back of your paper, so put a piece of newsprint down at least. And it's basically just about applying pressure, so. So you have to be patient and then kind of just carefully work your way through. I'm using a fair bit of pressure. You can see my fingernail is gone white. That means I'm using pressure. So. So that's the wooden spoon. You can check every once in a while. You can hold down one part of the paper and lift it up and kind of just see what you're doing. If you notice it's a little bit light, you can put it back down and keep on going. That's a spoon. So this is a traditional printmaking tool called a Baron. So traditionally they were made from bamboo. So it's a wooden disc that's wrapped in bamboo. Traditionally, this one's just plastic. But it's the same idea, just use pressure. You might get more pressure if you stand up and kind of put your weight on it. I think you have some here.
Would you like to demo this evening?
We could.
It's
Yeah,
up to
a
you.
little bit, sure. In a little bit, sure. Yeah, and we have a little press we can use now.
So how much is the press?
Oh, I don't know, I'd have to look it up here. $3.79.
You can also buy a glass Baron.
Ooh.
Whoa. I borrowed it from the university, I will have to return it.
Oh,
But we can use it for the class, I'll just bring it.
nice.
It's nice, they're kind of expensive though. This one's
We'll
like,
get Al to make us one. Al Hebert, he's the glass blower.
there.
Yes, yeah.
Got our own personal
So this one's $300, so it's the same price as the press brown.
one.
But the bottom has to be dead flat, right?
Nope, this one is not.
Oh, no, it's not, you're right.
Mhm.
Oh.
But it has nice weight to it, and I think it slides nice and easy. I haven't used it that much yet. A student wanted the studio to get one, we had some leftover money. Oddly enough. So.
You got to wait till you take it, well, that's for sure.
Sure do. I sure
Next
do.
time, next week I'm gonna test it.
So there's that, so you can try that out if you want. I also have a toothpick bearing.
Did you make that one?
I did. Actually, maybe, Jean made it, I think.
Oh,
Gave it to me.
Jean, yeah.
But I've made them before. So they're toothpicks. So Nick Seminoff, he went to Japan a number of years ago, and he visited the studio of a master printer. And this is what the master printer uses to print. So it's bamboo, so they're not wooden toothpicks, they're bamboo. So if you go to an Asian supermarket, they usually have them in stock. And they come in a nice container, so it's very convenient. So you take all the toothpicks out, you put some sort of epoxy or glue on the bottom, and then shove the toothpicks back in. Let that dry, and then you lightly sand the top. And now the idea is that each toothpick, each point of the toothpick delivers pressure to the back of your paper.
How long do they last?
Quite a long time actually. We have some really old ones in the studio that have been there for like, I don't know, 13 years, 14
So
years.
it doesn't necessarily have to be pointed
No.
to do the job.
If it's too pointed, I think it'd probably tear your paper and stuff. So you do
probably
want to.
chew that up after 10 years anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, they do wear out probably over time. But. So you do want to sand them so that it's not as much of a point. So.
You ever use the ones that Nick made with the ball bearings?
Yeah, we used to have them in the studio. I can't find them. Yeah, Sasha's palm press. So Nick used like ball bearings, and he figured out the ideal angle to hold it to get maximum pressure. So they work quite well too. But we had two in the studio. No, I don't know where they've gone. But.
It was probably around the time I was a student of his at the same time, yeah. And then he was teaching me how it could be a waterless lithography in a box, you know, you could just take it away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for this, you want to use a piece of mylar. And then you want to add a little bit of oil to the mylar, just to make it easier to move around. I can use vegetable oil, which works fine, but I find it does gunk up the toothpicks just over time. So you can also use silicone oil that I picked up from Michael's. It's not that expensive, like $4 or something. Just to make things slide.
I think we have a little bit here too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit.
But again, same idea. You want to use pressure.
I would say the glass one, you get less fatigue.
Yeah, it depends on what
How
works
many
best for
you're
your
doing.
how many you're doing.
Yeah.
I've used
And
something like this for a giant wood block. It was 30 inches by 60 inches. It took me like
one
2
unit or?
Yeah.
And how many prints did you make?
2. Yeah, addition of two. But they do work quite well. That's really your preference, whichever you prefer. Not too bad. Maybe a little bit. And you have your print. So I usually do 1 or 2 newsprints, just proofs, just to get enough ink on your block. And then when you're ready, you can go onto your good paper.
To do the next print, I'm sorry to ask this silly question, to do the next print, you'll have to re-ink it, or?
Yep, so
Yeah.
every time you want to make a print, you have to re-ink your block.
Yeah.
Back in there. I'll do one on washi.
Can I ask another silly question? Is the fresh layer dissolving into the first layer?
Yep.
So it's not like one is on top of the other?
No, as long as it's
You're not gonna
still,
get little lumps in there or anything like that?
no, unless the first layer is completely dry and then it starts.
But we have that 2-hour window or something?
Yeah. I'm adding a little more ink just because I noticed.
But some solvent-based inks would dissolve into one another because they're hot.
Yeah. The rubber-based ink we use at university will sit out for days.
Okay.
Yeah. I've used it in my studio and it's a bad habit, but I've left it out for a few days.
Not with the plastic sheet over there?
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
And you got little dust spots everywhere and cat hair. It's kind of gross, but it didn't dry, so. So it's, yeah, that's good that way. But if you want to print in layers, the rubber-based stuff takes a long time to dry.
Okay.
And if you do about 4 or 5 layers, you're not really printing on paper anymore. You're printing ink on top of ink on top of ink, and then it could take up to like a week to dry in between layers. It's a little frustrating. So disadvantage to that.
So what is your reason for doing 2 test prints, Patrick?
Just to build up my ink on the block, especially if you're printing for the first time. You
Yeah.
have no ink on your block,
I see.
so the first one will probably be light.
Light,
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually.
okay.
And ideally, it's better to build up your image slowly. And maybe err on the side of caution when you're inking up for the first time, just so you're not filling it up. I notice it's a little bit light there.
Oh, yes,
Maybe no pressure.
yeah.
That's why I added a little more ink, but it's just so you're not wasting good paper.
Mhm.
Because a newsprint's cheap.
Yep.
So 1 or 2 usually, depending on your image. And if you're good about it, you'll keep consistent with your inking. So if you can keep track of the passes, number of passes you do, once you got your block inked up full,
So,
yeah. Alrighty, back onto here. So I'll do one washi. If you notice your hands are getting dirty, one trick is to use little strips of paper and then fold them like a little lightning bolt. And then you can grab your paper.
Oh,
Some people use playing cards. Let's have a pack of playing cards and use that. So yeah, I'm just lining up my paper with my registration mark and then dropping it. And once it's dropped, I don't try to move it. Kind of press it down a little bit. So, printing on with the washi. The washi is nice because you can see through it. I think because the paper is thinner, I think will actually kind of go through the paper a little bit. So you can kind of like see your, how much pressure you're using as you're printing. Which one should I use? So you can start to see, you see where the print is trying to print, like it's taking on the ink. You see it coming through a little bit. Although sometimes, if you are printing with washi, it'll transfer onto your newsprint. You can see my image starting to show through. You might have to grab a fresh piece of newsprint every time, otherwise you'll get ink on the back of your print as well. This one's just a demo. Not bad, actually. It looks nice too.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Finish off the spot. That's still a little light, but... And then keep on going. The ink on the paper will take a little bit to dry. You can put it on the clothesline over there, let it dry overnight. If you like, or if you take it home, you can fold it in put in some newsprint. And try not to move around too much. Usually the ink is dry overnight. Sometimes, depending on how much ink you use, it takes a few days. So yeah, you do have a lot of time to work with it, which is good. Any questions on printing? So again, just pressure and ink. For your block, when you're finished with it, if you want to clean it, I usually just take a piece of newsprint without inking up the block, and then rub the back of the block, and then strip off as much ink as I can. I'll do one or two newsprints like this, just strip off ink, and you should get most of the ink off. Some people do take it to the sink if you have lino, and they'll wash it, so that works as well. With wood, I probably wouldn't, just to get your wood wet and kind of could swell and stuff like that. But you have the lino, some people will take their blocks to the sink. I would try to strip off a little bit of ink before washing your ink off your block. Otherwise it's going to be really messy. So the more ink you get off physically before you use soap and water, the better. We can try the press if you like.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Grab a smaller block, maybe. Cool. I'll do the little Hues. So this is another option. So this is a Woodzilla.
Woodzilla.
Yeah, speedball.
No,
No?
Woodzilla is out of, where is it made? Netherlands.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, it's distributed by Speedball.
Mm.
Yeah.
So they come in different sizes. This one's smaller, so I can't really use my bigger wood block. So smaller. So for this one, if you want to use a registration sheet, you can make a small one and put it right here, or just eyeball it. Now I need a small piece of paper. Perfect. So there's a felt that goes on top that'll help press the block into the paper. And basically it's just like a lever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that 30 seconds equates to all that rubbing that you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is a smaller block to be fair.
No, I realize
Yeah,
that.
but still, yeah. No, it's,
Still.
it's definitely
Yeah.
less work than the rubbing.
Or easier.
But you're limited to the size of the,
Yeah, they come in
Right.
different sizes.
Yeah, there is different sizes.
Yeah, you got options here. Wow.
Got options.
So give that a shot if you want to try. Again, the idea is pressure.
Yeah.
Alright, that over here.
Once everybody gets printing as well, there is also Cousin Jean's
Oh, yeah.
antique press.
You need like a heavy duty table.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we could put it on a cart for
Oh.
you if you want.
So just before I move on from printing, cleanup. So when you're cleaning up, if you have lots of leftover ink, I don't have any, you can use wax paper or saran wrap and save the ink for next time, especially if you've mixed a color that you want to use next time. As long as it's sealed airtight, it should be fine for next time. So I don't have too much ink left over, but if I did, I would put in some saran wrap or wax paper, wrap it up, and store it for next time. Otherwise, this does wash with soap and water, but again, you want to try to physically remove as much ink as you can before going to the sink.
so there's no issue with your oil inks with the combustion, is it? Oily rags and stuff like that?
No, I think it's soy-based ink,
Oh, okay.
as far as I know. So. At least there's another brand called it Kua, that Speedball owns. If they have any here, it's okay. It's really loose, but that's all soy-based. To double check on the trend build. And with the brayer, if you want to kind of roll it out, once you scrape it out, and then scrape it off. So again, just physically removing as much ink as you can. It doesn't take too long and it'll save you some time. And then you go to the sink and use soap and water and rinse it and clean it. That should be good. I do have rags and shop towels. For the Mylar, use soap and water in a spray bottle, just spray it down. And then have water and vinegar to finish up, just to make sure there's no greasy residue. Clean up. Alrighty, all good? Alright, I have two short demos. First one is, to finish off, So I'll show you an alternative method to transfer an image onto your block. So this works for lino and wood. I don't know if I've tried it with Sintra. I have a feeling Sintra might be difficult because it's not as porous. But you can transfer photocopies onto a block. So if you have a drawing, you can photocopy it and then transfer it. It has to be a photocopy or something done on a laser printer. So it has to be toner. So it can't be inkjet. So most people at home have inkjet printers. That's the way it works. I have a laser printer in my office at work. So if you do have an image that you want to transfer, if you send me an email of the image, I can print them out and bring them here. Hopefully this will work. The fresher the print or the photocopy, the better it is to transfer. This one's really old. I forgot to make a fresh one before I left, so let's try it out. And the quality of the transfer will depend on the freshness of your photocopy, also how often the photocopier or the printer has been used, when the toner was changed. So the quality will vary a little bit. So you can do a drawing, you can do a photo. So you're gonna put that face down on your block. We're gonna transfer using oiled wintergreen. So you can find that at a health food store. I got a big container from Amazon. So it replaces harsher chemicals. We used to use lacquer thinner in the studio. And if you have like 20 to 30 students doing transfers all at once, the air is kind of wavy. And you forget the last hour what happened in the studio. So this is a little bit better. Apparently it is a blood thinner. So if you're pregnant, you shouldn't use it, from what I've understood. I wear gloves just to be on the safe side. It is minty. It smells nice, but wear gloves. And you can put some on a rag or a shop towel. And this is terribly folded. Fresh photocopy.
Okay, through the backside. Okay.
Right?
You're doing it through the backside.
Yeah, so you rub the back.
And you only get one kick at it, right?
Yeah. If you do it again, it'll be later.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you add too much, and this might be too much, then it'll just splat, it'll spatter. Yeah, there's too much, then the toner just kind of goes everywhere. If you don't add enough, then it doesn't transfer very well. And then, basically, you can use pressure to transfer it onto your block. So, Annual's methods, I'm going to use a spoon.
So I would say make 3 or 4 copies of the print,
Yeah.
not one. Yeah.
Sure. Throw caution to the wind and grab an old photocopy before coming to class.
Oh, neat.
It's not too bad at all, all things considered.
Wow, that's impressive.
Mhm.
The nice thing about this is it automatically reverses your image for you. So if you have text or anything like that, you don't have to use Photoshop to reverse it, because it's going face down. And then when you print it, it'll print in the reverse from the block. So if you have text or anything like that, it's really nice and handy. So it's not too bad.
I like that one.
Yeah, and once it's dry, it's on there. It works great if you're doing color, because it won't come off. So you can clean your block with the first color, take the first color off, and then carve, and then print your second color, for example, and it'll just stay on there. So it's permanent, unless you use more oil wintergreen. So that's an option. I use it quite a bit. to be honest with you. Or you can trace it or draw directly. And we'll try to, I don't know, I'll take these outside and throw them out in my garage or like that, just so that,
Sure.
yeah. Last thing I'll talk about is sharpening your tools. And Jim can correct me on sharpening
No,
tools.
I'm not gonna say
Yeah, good. Please do. Just find better ways to sharpen it. So to sharpen my tools, I tend to use this stuff. So it's a green honing compound I get from Lee Valley. This will be available for you to use. So it has silicone in it, and it abrades the blades. Because the tools that we use, especially the U-gouges, they're a circular shape. They're really hard to sharpen traditionally. So one method is to grab a piece of wood, and this one already has a bunch of gouges in it. But if you don't have a gouge, I would make a gouge as deep as you can with the tool. And then you're going to take the honing compound and really shake the table. Work it in there, and then take your tool and then hold it at the angle that you cut it, and then go back and forth. This is best done as you work. If you are working on something for like 2 or 3 weeks and then your tool's completely dull, this will take a lot of work. This is kind of as you go along. For more of a substantial sharpening, I use Japanese whetstone. They don't have here, so that would be more of a professional level sharpening. But as you go along, this works quite well.
And you cut the original grooves with the actual tool.
Tool, yeah.
Because it has to match.
It has to match.
Mhm.
That way,
That's
the
brilliant.
shape it matches the shape of the U-gouge.
And that's just plywood.
Yep.
Brilliant.
But there's enough gouges on here, you don't have to do your own. So
You wanna
we're
focus on the lead end of the chisel, not on the heel. You wanna go to the toe, right?
no, please.
The heel of an angle is the base and the toe is the top
Got it.
on your chisel.
Mhm.
So with the business end of the chisel is the very tip,
Okay, got it.
and that's the toe.
That's the toe.
That's all I'm saying.
No, thank you. I'm learning too.
But that's where all the business happens, is right into the
I do find when you use this and sharpen the outside of the tool, you get kind of a burr along the edge. So you can either take, you can take a fine grit sandpaper and sand the inside just lightly to remove that burr. You can take, I've got an old chopstick I rub some of the honing compound with, and then kind of rub the inside a little bit.
Can I geek out again?
What else you can do?
That's the ideal scenario, is creating a burr, removing the burr.
Or else you can take your tool and tap it. I've seen that done too. So that's here for you. Lee Valley sells this fancy thing. I haven't used it that much. I don't know if I like it. It has a leather straw, which is kind of nice. So you put more honing compound here. This one's yellow. I don't know if it has a different grit quality to it, but
Yellow, red, and green, different grits.
good grit. This is finer then, or?
That's fine.
But you can give it a shot. With this, yeah, I think I prefer the other way. You want to kind of work backwards. If you go forwards, you'll gouge into the leather. Not the hard way. But it also has these bumps,
Various profiles.
profiles that will match the inside of your tool, so you can sharpen the inside of it. So you can try that as well. For me, that's the easiest way to sharpen them as we go along.
Okay, flat blade, you just pull it along there.
Yeah, flat blade, you can find a flat spot on the wood.
But he also has these Japanese stones, and that's what you wanna do
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah,
But the tools we use the most are the U gouges and the V gouges anyways, and there's grooves for those. If you sharpen a U gouge with a Japanese whetstone, you have to kind of, as you're going, you have to rotate the tool at the same time.
Yeah, but you also ruin your stone.
You can ruin your stone, then you might dull your tool more, and then, yeah. So, this will be available for you as you work, but it's not a bad idea to sharpen your tools, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you grab a piece of, scrap piece of wood, and just, I usually test my tool by going against the grain. If it carves nice and easily, then I know to sharpen it well.